Macabre Cast.
The devil's on the loose and he's dancing with the mummy.
Doc Mark and Chorus, the little mummy, here to bring you another episode of Macabre Cast, where we'll be dropping R's where they belong and adding them where they don't. So I watched a movie on Netflix that I came across that I had never heard of before from 2023 called Leave the World Behind with Julia Roberts, Kevin Bacon, and Ethan Hawke. Well, I've always thought looks a lot like Matt Dillon, but I digress. I had never heard of this film before, and then saw as the credits began that it was the executive producers were Michelle and Barack Obama. Do former presidents usually fund movies, produce films? I just thought this was weird. I mean, it'd be kind of like if Rocky had been produced by Richard M. Nixon. It just seemed weird. Anyway, it's about this family who takes this impromptu vacation from Brooklyn to, they go to Long Island. And I guess they rent a person's house. And before long, within the first day, all their technology starts to fail. The Wi-Fi, the phones really aren't working. They can't get on internet, regardless, even with their phones on data. This happens constantly at my house, so this would really just be a passing. This family, that's all they talked about. They were kind of like, oh wow, there's no Wi-Fi. There's nothing. That happens constantly at my house. So on their first day, while at the beach, they witnessed this giant oil tanker ground itself, which they're trying to find an explanation. But again, there's no news. They can't get service on anything, even the car radio. And as tensions begin to mount based on trying to figure out what's going on, the guy and his kid who rented them the house show up like in the middle of the night. And I don't want to say too much about this movie because the colder you go in, the better. I almost stopped watching the movie when I saw executive producer Michelle and Barack Obama because I thought, this is going to be a horror movie. This is going to be, something to do with the environment or the ice caps are melting. And
ew, seriously?
That is so gross.
I just really wasn't in the mood, but it's not that at all. The movie's very suspenseful. Enjoyed it a lot. Definitely recommend. Leave the World Behind from 2023 right now is on Netflix. And as you probably all are already aware, we are halfway to Halloween at this point. And there are not one, but two new Evil Dead films in production. Wow, I knew there was one after the Evil Dead Rise, but two in production.
Sheesh. Who's pushing these puppies out? Disney?
Yeah, you would think so. You don't want to oversaturate, that's for sure. And Barbara Crampton, Miss Reanimator herself, inducted into the Monster Kid Hall of Fame for the 22nd Rondo Awards.
Hey, Doc Mark and Karis, Hard Chat Matt here, and I was listening to a podcast where they were trying to come up with some plots for a new Friday the 13th movie now that the legal troubles seem to be coming to an end for the franchise. And one of their ideas was to set it back in the 80s. And at first, I was all for this idea, as that's my favorite era from the franchise, especially the first 5 movies. Once they hit part 6 and with Zombie Jason, I still enjoy them. But the goofiness level kind of goes off the rails there for me. And I was trying to figure out where, if you did do that idea, how you could fit Hockey Mask Jason into the Friday the 13th timeline. Because at the end of 3, he's taken out with a machete, spoiler alert. And beginning of part 4, he's taken to the morgue where they perform or are about to perform an autopsy on him. I might be confusing that with Halloween. And he wakes up and takes out the crew at the morgue and makes his way back to Camp Crystal Lake, where he eventually runs into Tommy Jarvis and his sister. I think there might be a chance for some stories in that little time frame, but I hate inserting the storyline into the middle of another movie with a hidden tale. I think the sky's the limit for Sackhead Jason, as there's plenty of unexplored territory there. But if you want the iconic hockey mask, I think you're going to struggle to fit it in unless you go with Zombie Jason, which I guess I'll take any Jason I can get at this point. What do you think, Dark Mark? Or would you rather see them go with a more modern day story like the soft reboot, I guess you would call it, which I did enjoy. I didn't enjoy everything about it, but overall I thought it was a pretty good Friday the 13th flick. Since I know you're also a huge fan of Friday the 13th. Well, keep up the great work of bringing the macabre to all your legions of monster kids as we look forward to the next episode.
Horror Chat just turned this whole segment into deep death dive, basically, because he's going to start with the Friday the 13th stuff. First, let's clear some stuff up. Part 4, he slides down the machete at the end, but the beginning of 4, he's in the morgue. Takes out some people at the morgue and heads back to Crystal Lake. It's 2 people. It's a guy and a girl. The autopsy, I think you're thinking of, is Jason Goes to Hell after he gets blown apart by the... Well, we won't get too much into it for people that didn't see it. But I think you're confusing those two. That all being said, neither here nor there. Let's get down to if Hollywood and Victor Miller or Sean S. Cunningham came to me and said, Dark Mark, you're going to write this plot. This is how I would continue the series. First of all, it pretty much already is Zombie Jason. We realize he's the undead, so let's keep that as is. As far as continuity from the other films, like I'm not going to jump from Jason Takes Manhattan. I'm just going to go with the Zombie Jason. First off, we need the look and feel of the first 5 movies, because after that, good or bad, that whole, I'll call it a smell, was gone. They never really felt like a Friday the 13th movie, so we need to go back to the look and feel of the first 5 movies. And part of my plot idea comes from something I heard some of the original Final Girls from these movies talking about, saying that they should all team up in a film and come back and destroy Jason. I like that idea, but here's how I would do it. You basically have this survivors group, kind of like an AA, where survivors of mass murderers or serial killers meet and talk and try to work through their problems. And in this circle of people, you mostly have surviving victims of Jason. You know, you go out and you get Stuart Charno, I believe is how you say his last name, who played Ted. Ted was the one in part 2 that went out drinking and never got killed because he went on to other bars instead of going back. You get Amy Steele, who's Ginny. She's the one that did the psychological thing on Jason. You have her also in the group. You get Dana Kimmel from part 3, Chris, the one that really went wacky and thought she saw Mrs. Voorhees come out of the lake. You have her there. And of course, to round it all off, you bring Corey Feldman back as Tommy Jarvis, the original Tommy Jarvis. In fact, maybe even have a scene with this group where maybe even Chris, Dana Kimmel, is going on about how she can't put things back together and can't get on with regular life, and people talking about facing their fears, and the door opens and, you know, in walks to join the group Tommy Jarvis, and maybe he says, you know, let's go get him, you know, type of thing. But you basically have all the final guys and girls team up to finally bring down Jason. I think would be that's a part 13. That's a Friday the 13th part 13 right there. That's how I would do it. Oh, and of course, just to add to the craziness, just so you have your murder mystery like the first 2 had, you know, you kind of your whodunit, your red herrings, you bring back Mark Venturini, if I'm saying that right. He played Vic. He was the guy that chopped up Joey with an axe in part 5 and went away to prison. Happens very near the beginning of the film. You have that he escapes from prison and he's out lurking. So when deaths start piling up, is it Vic? Is it Jason? Of course it ends up being Jason, but you need that red herring. And they actually have some of the people getting killed by Vic. And maybe have Vic get taken out by Jason. I don't know. But that's how I would do it.
Jason should have been watched every minute.
Boy, oh boy, you get so caught up in your own hype. It's ridiculous. You should see yourself when you get all worked up like this.
This month marked the 45th anniversary of the original 1978 Dawn of the Dead. And they re-released this to theaters. It was so limited. There were 2 theaters that were even in considerable distance from me. One was in Boston and the other in Salem, Mass. But then the show times, it was just so limited. It just wasn't doable, which is really too bad. Would have loved to have seen that on the big screen. Was too young as a kid when it came out to see. I didn't see it till it was on VHS. Listen to this clip from the 1978 film. This is the one of the SWAT guys, in the film Peter, and something he says.
You want to get rid of it? Huh? Do you want to abort it? It's not too late, and I know how.
Ew, seriously?
That is so gross.
Bizarre that he would have that kind of knowledge, and I wonder how or where he got that. Changing it up this week, no putrid music to introduce our horrible mention. Instead, we have Scary Larry with his horrible mention.
Greetings, Dark Mark and Karis the Little Mummy. Scary Larry checking in with my own horrible mention. Bored one evening, I turned on the tube and see a recommended movie, Mary Had a Little Lamb, a definite horror connotation. Free on Prime? Okie dokie. This dud came out in 2023, and right off the bat, I saw all the main characters and already wanted them to die horrible deaths. Set somewhere in England, a podcaster is on the verge of losing her true crime show. Her smarmy manager is complaining that ratings are low because nobody cares about cold cases from 100 years ago. She sees this news report of some missing people and convinces him to let her and her team of do-nothings go to a sleepy wooded town where unexplained disappearances keep happening. In overused horror tropes, they develop car trouble where the entrance to the woods of the missing happens to be. And they just happen to stumble on a seemingly solo farm in the middle of nowhere that happens to be housing the evil responsible. We're supposed to believe that this woman, who was forced into a one-night stand by some stranger after leaving a pub, birthed a half-human, half-sheep, not kidding, thingamabob that she reluctantly raises, and of course it turns into a killing machine. Late night, 2 cars out of commission, they convince the woman to let them all stay at her house overnight, and predictably she's leading them to her little lamb's slaughtering ways. Ridiculous plot, unlikable characters, and to add insult to injury, a complete ripoff of the final scene from Tobe Hooper's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Avoid this stinker like the plague. I don't know. Is a half star a rating? Quarter star?
Nice horrible mention, Scary. And it reading you loud and clear, avoid at all costs.
Yeah, more like Mary Had a Little Lame.
Deep Death Dive. And we're going to call today's Deep Death Dive a part 1. I'm going to give mine, and I ask you monster kids, if you could take any horror movie out there and change one thing, maybe something that would change the entire franchise, or maybe something that would just change that particular movie and make it better. Try to keep it down to one film. I know that can be hard, or we could always revisit this at another time. The film I choose today is Halloween 4, 1988. So, after Halloween 3, Season of the Witch's unsuccessful release in 1982, fans of this franchise saw little promise year after year of ever seeing another film in the short-lived franchise. And then, in 1988, 10 years after the original Halloween, the fans got what they hoped for. Or so we thought. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't hate this film. I just have problems with the many choices its creators made. Personally, I wish they had delved into John Carpenter's suggestion of the Celtic tribes from back in the day and where this curse originally originated. I would like to have seen them gone back to some kind of pre-story, then somehow continued on with the modern story. A novelization of the original Halloween was released during production of Halloween 2, and the book opens not with the little boy who kills his sister, but back in the days of the Druids. There is some explanation as to where the curse originated. Instead, what we got was a somewhat retelling of the original film, substituting Jamie Lee Curtis for her now daughter, experiencing the same horrors of Michael Myers. A lot of this film works, but a lot of it is truly just a retread. And if we were going to go with that, here's probably at least one thing I would have changed, or two. For starters, if you're unable to get a replica of the original mask, then don't use it. It's better than the washed-down cheap version that they used. I would rather have seen him stayed in the hospital cast that he begins the movie with, which looks absolutely frightening and reminiscent of the original mask due to its chalky white look. The daytime stalking scenes, well, they just don't have the creepiness of the original, and there's very few of it. They had a great surprise ending that shocked even myself. But if you're going to go with an idea with that, stick with it when you make your next sequel, as opposed to just kind of explaining it away and going back to business as usual. Anyway, these are the things, if we had to do the Halloween 4 that we got, the changes that I would make. So let's keep this deep death dive going. Give me a film that you would change something in to make what you think the film would be better, or maybe to change the franchise in a way that you wished it had gone.
And then this is a deep dive that we couldn't do before.
Yes, Keith Morrison, that it is. Until next time, stay on the road, keep clear of the moors, and beware the moon. But most of all, be good to yourself. This is Dark Mark, signing off. See you soon.
This is a Macabre Theater production.